Hey everyone, welcome to a brand new video, and today we're going to be going over part 2 of my poker journey. In case you guys missed the first episode, please go check that out, as it'll be very relevant to watching this video. In the last video, we ended up with me not knowing where I was going to go after my Vegas house had split up, after Black Friday had hit and online poker was now illegal in the US. And I wasn't really sure what my next step was until I had contacted my friend's sister and decided to go live with her in California to play in the commerce games. So that's where we're at now. Let's continue our journey. So, moving to LA was a choice that I made because of all of the news that I heard that the stud game there was amazing. Having had been playing stud games for most of my career, I thought that this was probably the holy grail of where I was going to find the best stud game. And I thought that this made sense. If I was a great stud player, this is where I should go. So I decided to move out to Santa Monica, and I was going to drive over to the Commerce Casino. I had made a deal with one of my friends from my Vegas house that I was going to use their car since they were moving to Australia. I could use their car to drive from Vegas to LA. So I packed all of my stuff, which really wasn't that much, just basically some clothes. And I think something along the lines of $100,000 in cash and Bellagio chips, and drove over to LA. That was an experience. So before I get to early 2012, I do have to cover a bit of my experience in LA. It When I got there, I decided I was going to start playing the 100-200 stud game. And at first glance, I thought that this game was going to be juicy, it was going to be great, and it looked very soft. I immediately started grinding it without much, research or I don't know. I didn't really talk to too many people. I didn't really know anyone in LA. All I saw was a stud game that looked juicy. I should probably jump into it. And I think that was fine because I had a lot of experience playing live stud already. But I didn't really know the players. I didn't know their tendencies. So I had to kind of learn quickly who the regulars were, who the soft spots were, and how I was going to go about, buying into this game, whether or not it ever went higher, or if some players maybe, wanted to leave the game and play lower, maybe I should go play the lower game. The one really good thing about the stud games in LA was that there was a ladder. So there was games that ran at 1020, at 2040, and 3060, and 100-200. I think the jump from 3060 to 100-200 was the biggest one. But the 3060 game was really good. And honestly, I probably just should have started there with my grind to get more comfortable with, the players and all of the different nuances that come with playing in a new casino and a new spot. But I did play this 100-200, and I did get absolutely run over. Every time I had a decent hand, I lost a huge pot. It went multi-way. The pots were getting inflated by the players that were there to gamble. So anytime I had a bet in there, it was going to get raised, and then three other people were going to call. So it was a really high variance game. And even though I felt like I may have had an edge in that game, I definitely didn't realize that edge because of how much variance was in these multi-way, multiple bet stud pots. For those that are familiar with stud, you'll know that like the equities run fairly close, even if you have something like pocket aces to start with stud, to start in stud. something like 775 might have 30 to 40% equity against you, if not more, depending on the suits and the dead cards. But it's a game of volatility, and it wasn't on my side. I ended up getting rinsed in that game. Not to mention that I also played in the larger mixed games that would run there as well. So I had a lot of confidence coming from Vegas after having success in the large mixed games. So I would jump in the 200, 400 game if it was running. I think I may have even played 300, 600 once or twice. I can't remember. But this is all on a short bankroll too. Like these games play very, very large, and I only had brought over about 110K maybe. 100K, somewhere around there. So I lost in the 100, 200 games, and I lost in the big mix games. And then on top of it, I ended up playing against one of my, I don't know if you would call them rivals, but one of the players that I played in Vegas and had a heads up match with that I beat for 36,000 or something like that. He came back and found me in Commerce and wanted to play me. I told them I didn't really have even that many chips on me at the moment, and they said that's fine, you can owe me. Like they just really wanted to play me. So we ended up playing again, and I ended up losing something like 20,000 to that person. So overall, I was still up on the match between them, but I had lost a big chunk of my earnings from, that match. And in Vegas, that was a big day for me. So I just pretty much lost almost everything. At this point, I was on the biggest downswing that I've had so far. I went from something like 100,000 all the way down to close to nothing, I want to say. And then that inspired me to have to go back home and live in New York with my dad. He had a job as a building manager for this rundown hotel, which I ended up living out of basically. He had a room for me that I could live in, but it was essentially an abandoned hotel that was waiting to be torn down. And he was just kind of managing it until that transition happened. So it was basically me, him, a bunch of degenerates who were squatting in the hotel and we couldn't kick out because they had rights. In New York, it's kind of crazy, but that's a whole other story, of course. So living in that hotel was an experience in itself, being basically busto, not having a game to play because Vegas kind of, built me up. Commerce in LA just crushed me right back down. And so now we're kind of at, zero ground again. So I had the idea maybe to check out the stud game at the Borgata because that was another place where a lot of people said I should go try out. Um, I've heard good things about it, and since I was back in New York, I had access to it, albeit a very roundabout way. I actually had to take the Chinatown bus from New York City, which I think cost something like $15 both ways. It was not a bus you really wanted to take if you didn't have to, especially if you were carrying any significant amount of money, right? And so I still had, my friend backing me, and they were able to send me money so that I could play this 75 150 stud game. So I managed to jump into this game, and I grinded it every day that I could. I ended up getting a free room at Borgata actually because I had basically told them, okay, look, like I can play in this game. Is there any way that you can put me up? It's a fairly big game, so they're happy to put you up if you're willing to play this game a certain amount of hours a day, and pay enough rake. And help build the game. So I ended up getting a free room, which was great. I met a bunch of new people there. I'd never played with anybody at the Borgata, but I actually really enjoyed that experience. I thought it was a pretty good casino. The 75 150 stud game was great. I would even say it might have been softer than the one at the Commerce, but it was definitely an enjoyable game. And there was also a lot of huge mixed games in a high stakes area, which I was very tempted to jump into, but I kind of refrained from doing that until until a certain mix ran that I couldn't resist, which was a 600 1200 stud high, stud 8 or better, and no limit hold'em mix. And I ended up getting my friend who was backing me and a couple of new friends that I met to invest. And I invested some of my own money just so I could afford to buy into this game, which was something like I think a $24,000 or $30,000 buy-in. Um, and that ended up going well. I didn't make a ton of money, but I made everyone who invested in me a few $1,000s, and I made a few thousand myself. But it was a pretty legendary game at the time for me to just jump into. I remember my palms were sweating just even sitting at this table, like shuffling the chips, because I knew every single pot I played was going to be worth like five figures. And it could affect my whole net worth. So even when I was, down and out, I'm still trying to play the highest games possible, which kind of showed you my mentality at the time. If I thought I had an edge, I wanted to play in the game. It didn't matter how big, and it wasn't really the most responsible thing I could do at the time, but I still went for it. So I grinded out at Borgata, and from there I would, hear about different games around different cities. And one of my friends that was playing at Borgata told me about this casino Parks that was just opening up over in Pennsylvania. And there was this 100, 200 stud eight game that was great. And he wanted to put me in it because he saw that, I was a good stud player and I was beating the Borgata game. And I had that reputation from being a Deuces Crack coach. And so this was kind of the next step in grinding for me because the Borgata game was good, but I needed something else if I was going to get back to those high stakes. And just playing this like crazy mixed game once in a while wasn't really sustainable. That was only a one-off because there was a huge a whale at the time who loved playing stud games. So whenever they played, everyone else jumped in that game. And then that was, that happened maybe a few times a year. It wasn't really sustainable. So this 100 200 stud 8 game was brand new. It was built around a few people. It was in this new casino and it sounded great. So I decided, okay, I'm going to go play at the Borgata with my one backer. And this new game, my friend wanted to put me in. So my backer had agreed with this guy that I could play another stake under this new friend and keep my old stake at the Borgata. Any action at the Borgata was theirs. And so it was a totally separate deal, but it had me traveling to two different casinos and playing two different games, which none of them were on my own money. So that wasn't ideal, but it was my way out and my way of rebuilding my bankroll. So I agreed to do that. And so I took another bus from Atlantic City to Parks. I would get a ride with anyone that I knew was going from one casino to the other. It was kind of a common, I don't know what you would call it, like a common trip for players to go between the two casinos now that the new one opened and the new games were really good. So I was able to hitch a ride whenever I could, and I slept on the couch of my Parks friend to play in the Parks games. Um, and that was fun. I kind of taught him how to play in that 100 200 study game as well because he was interested because it was so soft. So that was like another, piece of value that I could offer him at least for putting me in this game. Uh, and that was a crazy game as well. That one, the players were bad, the action was good, and they would often up the stakes as much as they could. So sometimes it was 100, 200. Sometimes they went up as high as 400, 800. But the highest I ever played in it was 300, 600. And I remember I distinctly had one night where my backer had put me in this game and I told him that it was going to get larger and larger. And he said, okay, that's fine. That's cool. But I don't think he understood how big a 300, 600 game could get. And I had one night where I was grinding 300, 600 with some of the biggest spots in the game. And I had lost 30,000 in one night. And I wasn't really devastated. I was just kind of expecting those kinds of swings because this game was that big. And I told my backer, and he seemed to be more worried than I was. Maybe he had a short bankroll. I think he had mentioned later on that he did, and he was just kind of really gambling with me. But he decided, okay, you can keep going, just, win, right? Like, I can't afford you to lose another 30K. And so I did. I kept playing, and I ended up breaking even that night, even up a little bit. And it was then that my backer was like, "Oh my God, I was really irresponsible. I can't take this variance. I'm gonna have to drop you from this game. I can't afford it." And I was absolutely devastated because at this point I was, up a few thousand, so I had earned a little bit of money for him, but I didn't really get to the point that I wanted to. I think there was a huge opportunity for me to continue playing in this game that I clearly had an edge in. I lost that opportunity because my backer was starting to get scared and didn't want that variance, which is fair. I think they underestimated the variance of these games, since they were a no limit grinder originally. And so now I'm back again at ground zero. I can still play the Borgata games with my friend, but to play in this 100, 200 stud 8 game uh, was tough, um, to kind of convince my other friend to back me in it. I was kind of in that game under the pretense that my friend, had a connection in it. So if I lost my friend, I kind of lost my seat at the game. And so I was out of options again, um, other than just grinding at Borgata. But I really wasn't that happy grinding Borgata games. It felt like a dead end. There didn't seem much of an incentive to just grind out this 75 150 game. I think I ended up breaking even with my friend, and I wanted to get back on my own. I was kind of tired of grinding under a stake. My other friend dropping me from the Parks game scared me, and thinking like, what if my original friends doesn't want to be backing me anymore either, then I'd be out of luck for those games. So I just wanted to get back on my own. I wanted to get back to my roots. I wanted to play online poker. I was tired of not playing online. I was tired of taking the bus back and forth from New York City to Parks to Atlantic City. It was just too much for me. I wanted some independence. I wanted some, responsibility on my own. And so I decided I was going to move to Mexico. Because around that time, I had a friend that I met in Vegas say, "Hey, I'm going to Mexico. I'm going to go play online poker. Do you want to come with me? You'll be able to play online poker. Here's your opportunity. Do you want to come?" I was like, "Yes, let's do it. I don't care if I'm going to grind, 50 cents a dollar. I'm going, I'm going to play online poker again." So I agreed to be roommates with this guy, and we were going to go play online poker in Mexico. So that ended up, being all right. I did. I played 50 cent a dollar on my own money. I was not backed anymore, and I quite enjoyed it, even though I was broke. And I had to even borrow money from my friend to pay rent a couple of times in Mexico. It made me feel like at least I was responsible for myself, and I was able to scale whatever I could earn. I didn't have to split half my profits. I had to study really hard if I was going to beat the online games again and build up my bankroll. And so I just grinded out low stakes in Mexico, from April until about June. And then June hit, and it's the World Series of Poker again. The World Series of Poker, as you guys may have realized, is a huge time for mixed games players. I had such big deals, and I thought this was going to be a great opportunity to earn some money again. So, talking to my friends, my original friend, we fired up the deal again. Hey, like, let's play the World Series of Poker. Um, this is my time to shine. I feel like I can make money. And so I did. I played the World Series of Poker 2012. I can't really remember if I had done anything big that year. I really don't think I did. I think I kind of fizzled out. Um, Maybe I had a couple of final tables here and there. I think I earned a few, $1,000 for myself. It didn't really equate to a big earnings, so I had to go back to Mexico and play online poker. And the same friend that I lived with from April to June was like, I'm going to get a lease. Do you want to be serious about this? We're going to sign a year lease and we can live together. And I thought, yeah, let's do it. This is my time. I'm going to really study hard and rebuild my bankroll playing online poker in Mexico. So I grind out in Mexico. I start at 25 cent, 50 cent PLO. I learn a whole new game, which is PLO, and I climb those stakes. I start getting a little bit better at the game. And then out of the blue, I get a coaching request through, I think it might have been Deuces Cracked or even Card Runners. I can't remember. I think it was Card Runners. I switched to making videos for Card Runners. This helped, pay rent in Mexico. And so I was making these videos in Card Runners, and I guess someone requested a coach through Card Runners. They saw my videos. They wanted me to coach them, so I agreed. I didn't know who it was, but I find out that this guy is a nosebleed online crusher. He's one of the best players of all time, and he wants my coaching because he wants to get into mixed games because there's some nosebleed mixed games running on Full Tilt Poker. And so he wants to play these 1K, 2K, 8 game games, which is just crazy to me, that he's coming to me for coaching. But I'm one of the few players that really understand how to play stud to a high level at this point. It's either me or a couple of other guys. And so I guess they saw some of my videos. They wanted coaching, so I agreed, sure, let's do it. I ended up coaching them in mixed games, and they thought, oh my God, why are you not playing in these mixed games yourself? And so again, it's like a flashback to the 2010 or whenever the first time I got backed was in Journey Part 1, right? Again, I'm coaching someone who's like, hey, you should play these games. Like, let me put you in them. So I'm like, yes. Okay, let's do it. I learned from my first time. I know that there's makeup. I know that, I'm going to be in this for the long run if I agree. This guy who's backing me has really deep pockets. He's a really successful poker player. He can put me in these games for a long time. I feel good about this. Let's do it. So that resulted in me playing high stakes again in 2013, and I got back right into playing up to 400, 800, 8 game online. I was, playing these games day in, day out while I was in Mexico, which was kind of wild. But I was feeling pretty confident. And this was leading up to the World Series of Poker in 2013, in which my backer now, who I was coaching, decided he was going to put me in whatever I basically wanted during the World Series of Poker. Because I had been doing all right online in high stakes games, he knew that I had a big edge in these live games. And so that leads us to World Series 2013. At this point, I don't really have a bankroll to my name. I'm doing like break even to all right in this stake with my backer online. I might be slightly negative at this point. I can't remember, but I just remember not having a bankroll still, and this guy giving me a free roll for the World Series of Poker. And then this was my opportunity because I was going to play 6 figures worth of tournaments. I had a free roll. I literally couldn't lose. They wanted to put it separate from the stake, which I thought was really generous. And so we worked out a thing where I had this complete free roll for the World Series. And then this was the biggest year of my career. I ended up taking second in a 5K Omaha 8 or better event for like 170K. I had some other cashes. I think I even cashed the main event again. And I ended up, for the first time in a long time, back on my own with a bunch of money. I think I walked away from that World Series with like 70 or 80K all to my own, and that became my new poker bankroll. And this was like the biggest, jumping off point that I had. I was so excited. But the only negative thing that happened during all of this, which I thought was really wild, but I wanted to play the 50K that year, which was the Players Championship. And my backer was happy to put me into it. And he asked me, what kind of markup would you think is fair for the 50K? He didn't want to put it into the other 10K packages, which is fair because this is a very large tournament. And so I think I mentioned about like a 1.2 markup, which, I understand now is really crazy, but at the time it was kind of accepted that players would ask for 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, even in some of these 10Ks. And so I was just going by what others were asking at the time, and I thought my skill level was comparable to theirs. So I said, yeah, 1.2, that seems fine. And then we had like, I had a 2+2 posts previously, and I mentioned I wanted to sell for the 50K at 1.15, and I forgot that I had made this post, and my backer's friend had saw the post, and then they thought that I was like trying to gouge the backer for like a 0.05 increase in markup, and it wasn't the case at all. I literally had made the post like 6 months prior to the event happening, and then when the event happened, my backer was like, "Hey, like let's put you in this. What do you want as a markup?" And so I just said 1.2. I totally forgot I put an interest out there previously, and then so I guess I had a falling out with my backer, which later on I talked to him about the whole situation, and we kind of realized it was just a misunderstanding of like I said a 0.05 difference. It was such a silly thing to fall out over after making them over six figures. Um, but it happened, and it was unfortunate, and it was one of my most successful backing deals I've ever had, because I made them six figures and then basically walked away from the deal because of this falling out. Otherwise, I probably would have still kept grinding underneath them. But I remember, yeah, like handing them like uh, oh, in just one event, I remember handing them $100,000 worth of cash from my backpack, and then just being like, "Okay, cool. I guess this is good for you, and I'll take this." And I gave them more money from other events that I had cashed, and that was it. So I was on my own at least, and at this point, it just sucks that I had such bad experiences with backing overall. But I figured, okay, it doesn't matter anymore. I have my own bankroll. I'm on my own. Let's do this. Where to go now? Um, I had some friends that were also big crushers that wanted to go play online and live in Vancouver. And so I said, sure, let's get a house together. Let's do it. So I ended up living together with some really good friends in Vancouver and playing, online poker again. I think I was focused on playing PLO, as that was the game I was mostly playing before I went to the 2013 World Series. I was playing online in Mexico, as I mentioned to you guys. I was playing in some pretty high stakes, and I decided to grind there with my friends. It went well. It didn't go as well as I would have hoped, but it was all right. I think I might have broke even during that house. Um, but then we decided to take the poker house to the Aussie Millions. And that was a big shift for me because I had never really traveled before. Mexico was the first time I left the country. Then I went to Vancouver, which was really cool. And then my friends were like, hey, let's go to Australia. The Aussie Millions was kind of like the spot for poker players to travel. And here I am sitting with like a 50 or 60K, maybe 70K bankroll. And I'm living with like these poker millionaires essentially, but I'm living the poker millionaire lifestyle in Vancouver. I literally had the most expensive room because I just wanted it, and I never, experienced such nice things before. So I ended up paying like almost double the rent that my other poker millionaire friends were paying, just because I wanted the cool room and I wanted the master and the blinds that you could click a button and close. Yeah, so I made really bad decisions basically with my money. But so this leads us to the Aussie Millions. I go out there, I play the main events on my own money. I play a few other events. I end up bricking it. Didn't go so well. I ended up losing like half of my bankroll again, just doing stupid things, playing live PLO, that not going well. And so I have like 30 or 40K left to my name. And I decide at this point, while I have money, I'm just going to go travel. I really enjoy this traveling thing. Vancouver was a blast. I had fun in Mexico. Aussie Millions was a blast traveling. I did the Great Ocean Road with a friend from poker, and it was just really a great time for me. So I decided I'm going to go travel. My friends ended up going another way. We stopped playing poker together. I think they were talking about making another poker house in Amsterdam later on, but for now, they just went a different way. I decided I was going to go travel, so I went to New Zealand. Everyone told me if you're in Australia, you should go travel to New Zealand because they're so close together and it's a long distance to go to Australia. You know, you're not going to go there too often. So I did. I decided I was going to go backpacking through New Zealand. I did. It was a great experience, but I had a lot of tough times playing online poker while I was traveling in New Zealand. I lost some big money playing online, not really being responsible. I highly recommend if you're going to go traveling, please separate that from playing poker because if you're on a laptop in a new experience, it's just not the same. So this leads me to the 2014 World Series of Poker, where now I have a bankroll. I don't have a large one, but I think, a backing deal again. Either my friend originally who would put me in some small events or something like that. Maybe I took a piece of myself. I think this was a year where I just literally sold action and I didn't take a backing deal. That makes sense. I think that's what happened. I had some of myself. I sold a bunch of action. I played events. I think it ended up flopping. I didn't really do that well that year. Maybe I had a couple of final tables, but I played a lot of events. Um, and so I was kind of over poker. I wanted to go traveling, so I decided I was going to go do a Europe trip. I decided I was going to take the Euro Rail and go through as many countries as I could, have as much fun as I could, kind of, spend some money and enjoy it before I inevitably thought I was going to lose it all doing something dumb. So at least I would have experiences, and so I did. So I decided I was going to go travel through Europe. And again, I made that mistake of playing poker while traveling. Don't do that. I remember distinctly one night where I was in Vienna and I had just gotten to my hostel. I was staying at hostels because my friend said to do that. That was a fun experience while you're backpacking, an easy way to meet people, etc. So I did it. Um, and I was waiting for my room in the hostel, and it was pouring rain. And I remember I was like, all right, well, I'm just gonna play some online poker, I guess. And so I start playing some online poker. The concierge says my room's ready. I go up to my room, and I find out that after unpacking all of my stuff in my room, this room has bed bugs. And I'm like, oh God, no, I already unpacked everything. I already laid in this bed. This is the worst. If any of you guys are familiar with bed bugs, they are the worst. And so I had to strip my sheets. I had to do all of my wash. I had to, get out of that room. And I couldn't go into another room until all of this was done. And so I was sitting in the lobby of the hostel, in one of those, like, window seats that have like a circle, you know what I mean? Like this little bench in a window seat. And I was just playing online poker. And I was so tilted about this experience that I was like, I'm going to just play really good games and make a bunch of money and make the best out of this, situation. And of course, what happens? I end up losing over 20,000 playing mixed games online that were above my bankroll. I was super tilted at this point. Emotionally, I was just all over the place. And yeah, that was one of the worst days of my traveling life. I'm getting itchy just thinking about those bed bugs and everything. You can tell, but it was awful. So I hated Vienna the whole time because of that experience. It was pouring rain. I went to like some of the castles in Vienna, and I was just like, a grumpy cat the whole time, just like upside down smile, walking around Vienna, just kind of like, I hate this city. This is awful. But I'm sure it's a nice city, so sorry if anyone's from Vienna watching this. It was ranked the number two most livable city or number one most livable city when I looked it up. So I had really high hopes, and then that just kind of crushed it. So yeah, Europe trip end up losing most of my money again. So now I'm back to ground zero on my own. I have 2 or 3 thousand left to my name. Um, and I had a bunch of other experiences living in Germany too, grinding online. I met a few friends that I lived with for a little while, but basically, it ended up me being broke again at the end of it. I had 2 or 3 thousand to my name. I didn't know where to go. I was in Germany finally when I decided, okay, I got to figure out what I'm going to do. And so I rented an Airbnb in Berlin for a month. Um, Around Christmas of 2014, and I had about 2 or 3 thousand, like I said, and I spent $1,000 of that on the Airbnb. And I decided, I guess I have no other option other than to grind small stakes PLO and build up this bankroll. And that's what I did for a month straight. I literally just grinded, and I made a friend who I studied PLO with. They were just some 25 cent, 50 cent grinder, or even less than that, actually, that just wanted to learn the game. So I decided I was going to just study with this guy every single day, play as much as I could. And I ended up grinding that 1 or 2K that I had left up into 11K. And I decided I'm going to go back to Vancouver because that was a beautiful city. I had a great time there. I have 11,000. I can grind 50 cent a dollar, maybe make like 3 or 4K a month and pay my rent and enjoy my life. So I go back to Vancouver in 2015. Now, my bankroll management still hasn't improved really because at this point I run up a 1K roll to about 10 or 11K, and I think, okay, I can just dabble in some of these mixed games again, like low buy-ins, like put in, $300 or $400 into a 2040 game or something, and I end up running up my bankroll and I press. I press and I press, and I go from playing 50 cent a dollar in Berlin to 1-2 to 2-4 to 5-10 PLO to 10-20 PLO, and I just start crushing these games. I'm playing with the likes of Sauce 123, Phil Galfon, Ben 86. I'm playing in the same games they are in these Zoom games on Stars, and I'm playing high stakes mixed games too on my own, and I'm crushing it. And I literally build that 1K to 2K from Berlin to over a 250K bankroll in, I want to say, a couple of months in Vancouver. And it was about this time that I get on Joey's podcast as well. If you're not familiar, Chicago Joey is a poker persona who has a podcast that's kind of legendary. And I get on this podcast, I tell him my story about how successful I am basically at mixed games and PLO. And what he doesn't know is like, this is like my rise to, a huge upswing. I think he saw me playing 1020 PLO and got interested in having me on because he's a big PLO fanatic, as you guys know. So, yeah, it was around that time my life was upswinging. Everything was going right. I was crushing all of the games. And then I started dating this girl I met online in Vancouver who ends up being my future wife. And that's a huge upswing for me as well. So everything just starts going right. And this is just like amazing. So I'm going into the World Series 2015 with like a huge upswing, a nice bankroll. And yeah, I met Grace in February. And we met online, which was unexpected. It was the first time I used online dating, and this was the first person I met, and ends up being my wife. It's actually a pretty awesome story. But um, yeah, 2015, just huge upswing, big year, and this is some of the photos of that time frame. So this is my friend in California on the left. This is us at Yosemite. I did try and spend some time in Santa Monica and California enjoying my time. This is the Commerce Casino, which I absolutely despise after my experience there. This is me in Mexico with a bunch of people that I met and made friends with. Me grinding at the pool on the right. This was kind of one of my daily routines. I would just play online poker, lay out by the pool. And then, the classic Corona picture by the beach on the bottom left, enjoying Mexico. This was just such a span of different experiences, but was definitely very memorable. The gray shirt is, I think, the 2013 World Series of Poker. Same thing with the teal sweatshirt, which was the event where, if you can see on the bottom left, that was heads up for a bracelet, and had a huge cash, which basically propelled me in order to travel around Australia and New Zealand and Europe and have great experiences there. One of my biggest regrets is throwing away that teal sweatshirt because that was clearly lucky. Um, just some travel photos, me in England, me in Switzerland, me in Australia, and then meeting my wife, Grace, who, if you've watched my stream, you'll know is the VIP um, of basically, everything. She's always so supportive, and I'm really grateful for having met her. And I think this lends us to getting to part 3, which we'll have to cover next time on part 3 of my journey. I hope you guys are enjoying this so far. So far it's, back up on the upswing. Life is good. I meet my future wife. I have a huge bankroll on my own, which is 6 figures. And how could it go wrong from here, right? Well, tune in to find out what happens in part 3. Thank you guys for hanging out. And if you got to this end of the video, please like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. I'll see you guys on the next one. Have a great day. Peace.